Hello beautiful people, if you're new here, hi, I'm Mai, and in case you didn't know, I'm currently battling through my behemoth backlog. My taste in games tend to vary quite a fair bit, some might even say eclectic, which is probably why my backlog is so bloomin' big. Thankfully, since the start of the year, I've been slowly and sporadically chipping through my games. In this video, I'll be covering the games I've completed this year so far, and just you wait, there's plenty more to come. If you're looking for some hidden gems, or just curious about some of the weird stuff I've been playing, stick around. I thought I'd start the year off small with this 4-in-1 bite-sized puzzle game. Although short, Miniatures still leaves a lasting impression. In this surreal point-and-click puzzle game, experience 4 short stories exploring childhood and imagination with dark undertones of mystery, loneliness, and curiosity. Each story has been meticulously planned to allow the player to work through different but similar themes. With 4 short stories to choose from, I recall starting with The Paludarium, which tells the story of a child being left at home alone, which left me somewhat sad from the get-go. A stark opposite to the anxious joy I felt in my final story, The Last Sandcastle, where you play crab-like creatures enjoying their day before the tide sweeps everything away. This was my absolute favourite out of all of them, likely due to the cute critters, set puzzles, and silly music I eventually created. I won't explore every story in this game, as I'd encourage you to try the game for yourself. Clocking in at about 35 minutes, Miniatures is a nice way to scratch that cozy puzzle itch, leaving you only wanting more. For me, Miniatures was the perfect warm-up, and trust me, it's going to get much better from here. So I've technically completed Wanderstop a few times this year, what with being sent a preview code in January, and then the full game in February by Ivy Road Studios. If you don't watch my videos covering the review and deep dive, then you can click this little card here, or I'll leave a little link in the description below. Wanderstop tells the story of Alta, an overachieving fighter who, after years of being undefeated, is finally beaten. On her mission to regain her strength, she goes to find help but unfortunately passes out on the way. Waking up in a glade with a very large bald man called Borrow, her mission has now officially changed. In order to become the fighter she once was, now she has to rest, grow plants, and serve tea to the weird and wonderful customers who visit the tea shop each day. So I absolutely fell in love with Wanderstop ever since seeing the first trailer, and as soon as I found out that it was created by the same people as the Stanley Parable, I knew that I would be leaving the game completely changed. It is by far one of my favourite games of all time. Not just for its cozy and relaxing vibes, but for the message it told during a time in my life where I felt more burnt out than ever. Let's just say it truly healed me. So from one emotional story to the next. Spiritfarer was a very long process for me, and for good reason. I took a really long hiatus from this game. I had so many people recommending Spiritfarer to me without me really knowing what the game truly pertained until it was far too late. Spiritfarer follows the journey of Stella, a fairy master tasked with guiding souls into moving on, accompanied by her feline companion Daffodil. It's a beautiful but gut-wrenching story filled with a plethora of colourful characters you'll love and maybe even hate. Let's just say you'll find at least one character you'll grow attached to and likely become a blubbering mess like I was when it's time to say goodbye. Along with helping each soul on your boat move on, you must craft and upgrade the vessel to meet their requirements. I stopped playing the game for about a year as I quickly discovered it hit way too close for home for me after losing someone really close to me in my life just before playing. I just thought it was just another cozy game where I could just go and upgrade, make friends, but oh, yeah. I would advise you then that if you are currently going through grief or you've lost someone close to you, then maybe give this game a little bit of a break and wait, as it does cover the topics of death and grief really closely. Other than that, Spiritfarer is utterly gorgeous with its art style, characters, music, and tranquil atmosphere perfect for playing after a long or stressful day. So it really seems like the start of the year was a complete emotional roller coaster for me, and with this next game, I didn't quite expect a bump in the road. So where do I start with this one? You're not always going to find a game that you enjoy, and The Town of Light was definitely a game that wasn't my cup of tea. So this game had been living on my Switch since the early days of buying the console, and I thought I'd finally see why I bought it in the first place. Looking back, it was likely because it was incredibly cheap in the sales. The Town of Light is a psychological, quote-unquote, horror game inspired by true events at the abandoned Volterra psychiatric asylum in Tuscany, Italy. As you walk through the asylum, you discover more of Renee's story, a 16-year-old admitted to the hospital in the 1940s. The game carefully depicts a story inspired by the real-life events and conditions mental health patients were put through under their so-called care. Although the horrible graphics and somewhat tedious gameplay on the Switch made the experience less than pleasant, I appreciated the honest representation of mental health conditions and delicate subject matters presented in the game. With almost a nod to American McGee's Alice Madness Returns, the game unfolds the story through triggered flashbacks portraying the horrors Renee was put through during her stay at the asylum. I should warn you though, there are references and scenes to sexual abuse, torture, gaslighting, and a truly harrowing ending. Although the game didn't look pretty or run very well, I feel like the story and depiction of mental health was somewhat its saving grace. Which is a shame really, as being someone who has struggled with their mental health before, I feel like there aren't many games out there that just don't treat this subject with the care that Town of Light does. Saying that, it's an afternoon I will not be getting back anytime soon. After treading through the halls of the asylum, no threats in sight, I thought I'd return to another emotional game I've been meaning to finish, and I was definitely not prepared. So I have to tell you something, when I covered The Last of Us Part 1 in my Halloween video last year, I hadn't completed the game by then, and I thought I was a lot further along than I actually was. Looking back, I must have only completed about a third of it, which is probably why when I properly picked it back up in April, I was confused as hell. I had no idea what I was meant to be doing or what had previously happened, so I just persevered. I think this is where my backlog battle truly kicked off though. The new season of The Last of Us was due to be released, so having failed my previous plan of completing it before season 1 was out, I was determined to finish it right then, right now. I managed to finish the main game and the DLC left behind 2 days after Season 2 aired, and I was absolutely buzzing. For those of you unfamiliar with The Last of Us, it's set in a post-apocalyptic America after being completely decimated by a cordyceps outbreak. You play as Joel, a smuggler reluctantly tasked with escorting Ellie, a young girl immune to the infection. Along with surviving the unforgiving landscape and the infected, Joel and Ellie must navigate their dysfunctional father-daughter-like relationship, which in the early game is uncomfortably accurately portrayed. I know a lot of people hark on about how amazing The Last of Us is, but now I finally get it. No matter how many times I play the game, DLC included, whether it be restarting or just jumping in to play a chapter or two, I am moved, in parts brought to tears, beyond belief. Between its quiet moments and jam-packed action, I grew to love this beloved game for what it was, even with some of its character flaws. I still question the ending now, especially after playing The Last of Us Part 2. Now, Last of Us purists, put your pitchforks down because I have a reason behind preferring Part 2. Immediately after completing Part 1 and ready to start the new season of the show proper, I was ready to pick up Part 2 following the first episode. Thank God for no spoilers, right? Don't worry if you've not played the game, watch the series, or somehow managed to come out spoiler-free, I won't say anything. I've accidentally done that before, and I don't wish to do that again. However, even before the game came out, I still somehow managed to predict what was yet to come. Following the events of The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2 takes place about 5 years later. In a tragic turn of events, you switch between Ellie and Abby, both on a path of vengeance. I think this effective device is an excellent way to question the morals of each character and decide who is in the wrong here. Ellie is ruthless, impatient, and blindsided by rage throughout the game, so I found myself questioning and doubting her actions throughout the entire playthrough. There were often times I'd verbally be telling Ellie not to do it and feel so disappointed in her, even though I was the one in control. But, and here's the clincher here, looking at it now, I'm not at all surprised at her actions. Abby, on the other hand, felt like a stark opposite to Ellie, both in gameplay and morals in my opinion. I felt safer, less cautious, and would often take her side when it came to decision making. She'd still had her mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I felt like I could sympathize with her more. Initially when the game came out, there was this massive uproar about this decision, but I personally think it was really smart storytelling. So I could go on and on about this series, but suffice to say, as soon as I completed it, feeling a shell of myself, I couldn't resist starting again with New Game Plus. So after back-to-back games, questioning my morals and testing my emotional stability, I knew it was about time for something cozy. For those of you who don't know me, I am a certified cat lady. My cat Buri is even my mascot, for Christ's sakes. After playing the demo a while back, I just knew I had to play this completely when I briefly had Xbox Game Pass. It was a breath of fresh air compared to the previous games on my list too. You play as a little kitty, trying to find their way home and causing some chaos in the process. Fulfill quests given to you by different animals, from shiny obsessed crows to an interdimensional tanuki. Little Kitty Big City has some really charming characters, a whimsical art style, and some aggressively adorable moments that as a cat owner, you'd recognize straight away. Just look how cute it is, just stretching and sleeping in the sun. Anyway, as I was saying, the game is just pure joy. The puzzles and platforming are a mix of satisfying and not too challenging, along with its myriad of collectibles you can discover throughout the game. These collectibles are nothing too fancy though, but with each gacha machine, you can unlock silly wee hats for your feline to wear. Plus, with the new update, you can customize your kitty to look like your own fluffy loved one. Let's just say I think it might be time for me to replay it again and appropriately have Buri take the reins in creating chaos. Don't expect a particularly long game though. It's only about 2.5 hours, and if you're like me and want to get all the hats and 100% it, you're looking at anything between 4 to 6.5 hours of blissful tomfoolery. Once I completed this game though, I was ready for something a little bit more challenging with the next game, and apparently a little more trippy too. I wasn't joking when I said my taste in games was a little bit eclectic. I've always been quite partial to puzzle games, but I especially love ones that think outside the box. Akin to the Stanley Parable, Superliminal is a surreal puzzle game which uses forced perspective and optical illusions as its main solution devices. Superliminal is set in a reality where you're a patient trapped in a simulation-type dream world whilst undergoing dream therapy, unable to wake up and only to return back to the simulation again. Solve puzzles and propel yourself through the eerie corridors and vast rooms in hopes to wake yourself up again. I recall some frustrating moments with some puzzles, but I'm proud of myself for not using any walkthrough or guides to figure out what's next. Sometimes a challenge is good for the mind, right? Throughout my playthrough, I couldn't help but compare it to the Stanley Parable. Although there was no sarky narrator, but instead replaced with a pesky AI and painfully annoying Dr. Pierce to guide you through the game, I found that both games have parallels. Instead of being stuck in a Twilight Zone-drenched office building, you're trapped in your own mind. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would, and much like the previous game on this list, it clocks in at about 2.5 hours for the main game, more for full completion, so technically I was able to complete 2 games in one afternoon. So if you're looking for a game which will bend your mind and scratch that puzzle itch, then Superliminal is a fantastic choice. Now for the final game, something I completed more recently, and definitely a game I don't expect myself stopping anytime soon. So this is a little bit of a cop-out as this game has so much replayability, especially with all the updates its studio keeps rolling out. But I'm still going to count it. You'll be glad to hear that if you have no friends or if your schedules are constantly clashing, you can play Peak solo as well. Saying that, I find whenever I play the game, there's something about playing with friends which really shows how simultaneously dumb, patient, skilled, and crap at video games I can be. In Peak, you play as a scout or a group of scouts after a plane crash. You're tasked with reaching the peak to get to safety after surviving the harsh and sometimes extreme environments along the way. Simple, right? Well, if you're playing with friends, not so much, but truly in the best way possible. Playing with friends makes Peak utterly hilarious as you attempt to work together to reach the top, avoiding getting poisoned, or in some cases wreaking havoc on your fellow scoutmates. Playing solo, however, feels more quiet and a meditative experience for me. I still have to complete the game solo, but with a little help from my friend, we finally made it to safety. A big shout out to Amy, who literally carried me to the peak. I know that people call these type of games friend slop, but I feel like Peak doesn't deserve such a descriptor. With the map refreshing every 24 hours and the constant challenge it brings both with solo and multiplayer, I feel like the game manages to keep things fresh. Although I have already technically completed it, I still have a long way to go in order to receive all scout badges and experience each new update. I'm still marking it off my backlog list and keeping it as a palate cleanser between games though. So that's my 2025 so far, from tiny puzzles to paths of vengeance to chaotic climbs to the peak. If any of these games made you feel the same way, or you're currently battling through your backlog as well, why don't let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, stick around for more videos like this by liking and subscribing. The more you do so, more people see my videos. And if you're interested in finding out how I started this backlog battle in the first place, why don't you check out this video here? It's a pretty fun time. Thanks again so much for watching, happy gaming, and have a good one. Bye! I think that's alright.